Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cloud Show for another episode and another fascinating conversation, this time with an author. And we're going to talk about IoT today and lots about how to use IoT in the cloud. I'm sure it's going to be an interesting conversation, of course, as usual on the Cloud Show. So today we're going to talk with Dan Clark. Hello, Dan. Nice to see
Hi,
you.
everybody.
Hi.
Good to see you, Magnus.
Yeah, lovely. So let's first let everyone know who is watching. You're Dan Clark. I already said you are a senior risk management consultant by trade with Wells Fargo, and as far as I understand, you're out of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Yep.
Yep. And so, what do you do at Wells Fargo as a risk management consultant?
Some of my background is in Power BI and advanced analytics, and so I'm bringing that to the Wells Fargo team to try and help them, get something out of their data. So,
yep.
I've been with them for about a year, and then before that, I was with Microsoft for about 4 years. So,
right. And so technically, a bunch of Power BI or data engineer. You speak at conferences as well?
Yes, I've spoken at a lot of conferences, and then, as you know, the COVID hit, and then they're not so much fun anymore.
I know. That was,
and nobody's paying me to go anywhere. So if anybody wants to, sponsor me, I'm open.
Definitely. But you are also quite a bit of an author. So let's start there because you have written multiple books, right? You have written about VB and C# and big data and Power BI and stuff. And we also have
I started, I don't know if anybody knows, but Dan Appelman was a guru for Visual Basic back in the day.
Okay.
And I got started by having lunch at his table at a conference.
Right.
And I said I wanted to create a book on VB. And he said, send us the proposal. There with A Press. And boy, that got the ball rolling. So I did VB.net. I did C#, a couple editions of that. I did, like you said, some big data stuff, database. And then I got into Power BI and have a very successful series on that. And then my latest interest was IoT. So I thought, why not write a book?
About IoT as well. So here it is, the IoT Handbook by Dan Clark. I have it right here. It's a great book. So tell us a little bit quickly about this book, but we also want to talk about IoT, of course, and see what's up with IoT and the cloud right now. But
so when I first started the book, IoT was hot, and then it kind of leveled off. As a matter of fact, Microsoft discontinued one of their software as a service IoT offerings, which I was very upset to see.
Was it the IoT Hub?
It was the the Hub's still there. That's the PaaS platform as a service, but they had IoT Central, which was a software as a service. It was really a good product, but I think what happened was they came out, like most things, everybody was excited about it, and they started to delve into it, and they said, well, I'm not sure how we're going to use this. And so I think, and the expense at the beginning was pretty large, so a lot of companies just kind of shelved it. But in the last, this year, I've seen a lot of comeback and people using use cases that will give them a return on their investment, and they're looking at things interesting to do with that. So especially if you're in, well, of course, the medical field is really jumping on it. And I think the agricultural, believe it or not, they are really getting into the
IoT, of
analytics
course,
and collecting data and
have sensors and things like that for their
right,
crops.
right,
Yeah,
and all the stuff. They have satellites into their tractors now, and all kinds of things going on. So
yeah, that's interesting stuff.
I think it's a good time to get back into IoT and see what you can do with it.
Yeah.
So,
but let's go back a little bit there, because so before the cloud, some companies or businesses were already doing IoT. IoT wasn't anything new like that as such, right? But it was more challenging to do it before you had cloud resources. And then Azure came along, and there was this kind of a boom or an era where IoT, well, like you said, it was kind of hot.
Right. So, yeah, traditionally, probably a lot of them used mobile phone lines and things like that, and it was very expensive to get into. Yeah. And you had to really know a lot of different areas to troubleshoot it.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think the one reason why I chose, well, of course, I have a background in Microsoft. I used to teach for them, as a matter of fact, an IoT course. And one of the reasons I like their suite is because you don't have to be an expert. Just like anything with Microsoft, they take care of the plumbing code and everything for you, and then you can just kind of concentrate on getting that data. And they also have the back end, because once you have it's not just about getting the data, right? It's about getting data and then doing something with it. So they have the suite of tools that you can analyze the data with very easily, and lots of data, streaming data or whatever you want to do with it. So, there's the Microsoft tools, and then there's a really good community of open source out there. My problem with open source has always been the support you get. And so I like to have something that's going to support me when I set this thing up, and just not. It's really important not to. Sure, you can set up an IoT to take temperatures in your yard or something like that, but when you go to the enterprise, you really need to know security. You need to know bandwidth. And there's so much things that go into the IoT.
Yeah, and it can also become a lot of data, right? You can get almost like too much data, or how much you're going to sample from the data to make sense of it, and so on, right?
Yeah, that's the other thing. I think you decide whether or not you want to aggregate data down in the field, or if you want to just take the raw data back. And again, that's some of the areas where we're seeing a lot of advancement is with your IoT devices. You have just what I would call dummy devices that just send raw data back.
They measure something, they send that. They measure it, they send that. If they don't do anything, they just measure and send.
Right. And so industry has been using that for a long time. But now we have the ability to have more compute in smaller spaces. And we all know this with our phones and everything. And so now we can actually send down, a SQL server to store the data in the device itself. Or we can use SQL Server to aggregate it before we send it up. We can also have it so that if it goes offline, we store it. As soon as you get the signal, it sends it back up. So
this is what's commonly called as at the edge, right? Edge compute.
IoT at the edge. And there are devices coming out now that are specifically made to take advantage of all that, and they have all the software installed, security installed. And so if I was going to be doing a project, a lot of people have investments in older technology.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably say, let's swap out some of this older technology and put some of the newer stuff in. And then look at the total return on investment. So it's like saying, okay, I don't want to spend that for the newer devices, but in the long run, you're probably better off. And everybody knows, that with this cars and stuff like that. So.
Right. So is that the big trend now to have a bit of smarts out at the edge and try to figure out how to best process the data a little bit or aggregate, like you said, and do some intelligence at the edge and then send some kind of a smarter result.
Yeah, that's really important when you get into things like video analysis and
like
so forth.
Security cameras and things.
Because that's a lot of data.
It is.
Try and send that back up.
Yeah.
So we do have things that you can make for machine learning and so forth, and put that in the edge too. Yeah. And so they can go through and do their analysis of the video.
Yeah.
And then just send the results back up.
So let's say that it is that it is a security camera. You put some smarts onto it to discover, for example, when there is a person in the camera view. If there isn't any person, then nothing is happening, and it's very uninteresting. We don't have to send a lot of video of a backyard, an empty backyard, right? But if suddenly there's a person, it's nice if that device can detect, hey, there's a person, and this is actually interesting data, right?
Yeah, and there's interesting use cases for a lot of this, security-wise and just surveillance and things. So,
aren't they? Tell me, aren't they using these for like workplaces to discover potential hazards and things?
Yeah. So, there's a lot of it in workplaces. Just from detecting who's in the lobbies and so forth to, things like, the temperatures, controlling temperatures and humidity in office buildings. And so, again, office buildings are really relying on this technology.
Oh, yeah. So is that any of the things? Is that any of the things that we can read about in your book there?
Well, in the book, I actually go deep into how you do this with Microsoft Suite. So we have IoT Hub, and I show you how to set up the devices on IoT Hub.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so there's two parts to the book that I think are very important. So it tells you how to update your devices and, send, software components down to the devices. And then what I do is I have the second half of the book is, what do you do when you have the data? So it goes into, doing the analysis, showing it on Power BI and so forth.
And what's brilliant about all of this is that your backbone is that you're using Microsoft technology, you're using Azure, so that this technically, if we want to use that term here, I guess it's appropriate. Technically, that means that anyone could actually do that. It doesn't require a huge investment in terms of what would have been before we used the cloud for IoT. Like you said, using phone lines and things like that was kind of expensive. And
you still have to know a little bit about programming, and if you're C# programmer or a Python programmer, you're going to have a step up. But it's no longer in the days when you have to have a dedicated, IoT person, somebody who's, relatively smart and knows coding and stuff. If I can do it, anybody can do it. So, and it's a lot of fun. Actually, it's one of those things where you get hooked on it. They actually I saw for $250, I can get a complete weather station and put it up. And
which is kind of cool, I have to say.
Yeah,
that's really that's something. Yeah.
And there's all kinds of things coming out. So yeah, it's actually fun. I was even there's a thing that project somebody put together on I think it's called makeit.com or something, where they automated their so they had a video signal, and when they saw their dog, it would open the door
cool.
and let them out or let them back in. When it saw like a groundhog or something, it wouldn't let them in.
That's just lovely geekery. I love that sort of stuff.
So I couldn't convince my wife to spend for that, but
oh, come on. That's a valid use case right there. I love that.
Yeah. So it was a lot of fun projects out there that you can get involved with and build your skills and do it that way. So just like anything else, it's a nice community. And there's actually used to be on Microsoft, but now it's I think he's on his own. But there's an IoT show out there. So if you go to look up IoT show, there's some really cool videos that show you how to do some of these projects and how to work with the stack. So
that's a great,
and he does both.
Tip. Yeah, thank you.
And he does both Microsoft and the open source, so you get to compare the two and so forth. And I'm not if you find a tool is a tool, so I just like Microsoft because they make it easy to get started and everything. But
I'm the same, right? It just happened to be that I focused on Microsoft stuff, and there was no real reason for it, but here we are, right?
Yeah, and so what you learn here, if you find good open source tools, you can you can go back and forth. So it's really exciting area.
Yeah, definitely. No, I definitely agree. So what should a person do if they want to get into it? Like first, like, buy the book. Yeah, okay, fine. But apart from that, like, how do you step into the IoT world if you're not into it yet?
Yeah, just get yourself a low cost sensor and start and go on the internet and look for stuff to get your hands wet and or your feet wet, and you'll be amazed at how fast you're going to catch on to this. So, yeah, the biggest thing I think for enterprises is the security. And that's another reason why I like Microsoft, because they have dedicated security. They have like 10,000 security people on Azure and their IoT and everything. So they're really
that's a really good. That's a really strong case for using an enterprise service, enterprise grade service like the IoT Hub and things like that, because they have taken that into account already.
Yeah, and even if you look at stuff like Java that started out as open source, you still have companies that make their living packaging it in tools that make it easier for you to develop. So even if you're doing open source, you're really using a secondary company to help you out, especially if you're gonna do the enterprise. So
all right, so now we know how to get into it, and I really, really appreciated having a conversation with you today because it was very interesting, and I'm curious about IoT. And unfortunately, I have not had a customer with an IoT project yet that I could get into. But thank you. That's
why you're gonna make up your own.
Oh yeah, that's why I'm going to make up my own now. I have the book now, so I can figure things out. All right, thank you, Dan. Thank you very much for being on the Cloud Show today to talk about IoT and the cloud. And I really appreciated having you on the show.
Yeah, it was great talking with you.
So. Thank you. So, all right, thanks everyone for watching this episode of the Cloud Show. And next week we'll talk to someone else about something cool. See ya.
See ya.